Hello, welcome to the series of MongoDB. This is the first one on how to start working with MongoDB. So this lesson is about whether you're going to structure your data on MongoDB or not. Okay, the first thing you need to know is that you're dealing with collections. So tables are collections. If you are used to the SQL language and methodologies and technologies, then you are used to work with tables. And then you have a table, you have some fields, and that's the way you are used to. So instead of table, you have collections and documents. So what's a collection? A collection is a list of documents. So each document is having its own structure. It does not need to be the same structure for all the documents, so they are kind of free type. So the good thing is that they are easy to understand, because when you have data, you have a list of data. You don't only have one user, you have a list of users. So in the MongoDB methodology, this is understandable. Like, okay, I have a list of user documents which is saved into a collection. So this is all the thing about collections. This is all the mystery. So this is just how do you structure your data. So this is a sample document. Okay, you have an ID, which is underscore ID always, with an object ID, which is a unique ID. Then you have your user, which is an object. And then inside that object, you have more fields. You know, like this one, you have the last name, you have the first name, you have the city. Then you have groups. For this one, the groups are a list of items. And then inside that list, you can have anything. You can have a list of IDs. You can have a list of dates. You can have a list of strings. You can have a list of objects too. This is the case. You have a list of groups, and each group is having an ID and a name. Then you have another field, which is age. And that field is just having a number. So it's kind of integer. So you get to the problem of, okay, what do I do? Do I do hard writes or hard reads? What is that meaning? Okay, when you're having an application on a database, for example, in the SQL world or universe, you actually are doing easy writes and hard reads. Why? Because when you are reading data, you just inserting in a bunch of different tables. But when you are reading, you actually are having the foreign keys. So these foreign keys is actually a relationship from one table to another. So when you are querying data, the database needs to get data from different tables. In MongoDB, you don't really need to do that. You can have all the data inside the same document. It's up to you. So you can decide, you can decide whether you're gonna have hard writes or hard reads. So you can kind of replicate the SQL ways of doing things, and then you can keep having IDs. You can have dbrefs, which is kind of like the foreign key in normal tables. But you can also embed documents. So this is what we're gonna cover. So the good thing is that, the first thing is that you think before pushing data, whether you're gonna have just an structured way of writing data, or you're gonna have it with some logic, some structure. So you need to define your collections. So when you're writing an application, you need to say, okay, what are gonna be my collections? Then after that collection is defined, you need to think about whether you're gonna have some predefined document structure, whether you're gonna use dbref or not. So what's the dbref? It's like a foreign key in a SQL universe. So it's having some background, some overhead in the database, in the MongoDB. So that's why you need to think before doing it. So you have two options if you're just doing the hard readings, that you're saving just the IDs. You have the option of the dbref, and then in the library, when you hit the populate, then it's gonna populate all the document for you. You can define which fields are going to be populated. So it's actually going to all these different collections, gathering data until all the data is gathered. So it's actually slower when users are trying to get data, but it's easy to read because you just write your data into the different collections. So you need to think about it before you are actually doing. Or the other option is document embedding. So you have a main document, and then you have either a list of documents inside related, or another sub documents, but can be from different collections, but you have them embedded there instead of just an ID. So the advantage is that when users are querying data, are getting data, then it's much faster because you got the document there with all the data. You know, you have the users, the groups, the you know, all your references are there, and you have all the data. So the visual applications just don't only need to define which fields want to use. So you say, okay, I want this field, I want that field, I only want these 4 fields, and then you just get the data, and then you just display it. So it's pretty handy. So, but you need to define whether you need the structure or not. I mean, just depends on you, on your application, how your team is working. So in case you have no structure, this is like, okay, I mean, it's nice. Maybe you have some collection where you don't want the structure because you don't want to think about it, because maybe you just don't know. As your application is evolving, then it is having a different structure. So you just can't say, okay, as you know, on demand, as we go, we will see. Or you can have some structure. You can use something like Mongoose, which is actually doing some model storage dealing in your code. So it's probably easier to think about your documents, your models, and as you are writing and pushing those Mongoose models, is the code is looking, you know, better because you don't really need to have so much physical MongoDB code. But if you're going with no structure, then probably better go with MongoDB, because you say, okay, I don't want to deal with models of Mongoose. You can also deal, you know, you can go also with Mongoose and not thinking about any structure, but it doesn't make much sense because in the Mongoose, you need to define which field, you know, the type and that kind of thing. So if you are going more with a different way of doing things, then like no structure, and you just, you know, you just want to push anything you got, and you don't really need to or think about, you know, where you need some structure or not, then it's more handy, it's easier for you. I hope you enjoyed this lesson. This is just, you know, to start. So when you start an application on MongoDB, you need to define whether I want a structure, you know, fields with validation, whether I need to validate if a field is a string or a number or a date, or just want to push everything without a structure. That's probably the first thing you need to do. Then you need to define, to think about your collection or your documents, whether you're gonna have IDs, like dbref or normal IDs, or just gonna have embedded documents. So those are the main decisions when you start in a MongoDB project. I hope you enjoyed. And as always, comment below in the comments to tell us your feedback and your experiences with these MongoDB structures.